What is your definition of success? For some, it's a husband or wife, kids, and a white picket fence. For others, it's a six-figure job with a luxury sports car. Regardless how you define success, everyone wants to know the same thing. Can it be achieved? This is JQNA Season 1, Episode 2, Achieving Success. I'm your host, Catherine. Success is a challenging topic to discuss, mainly because, as I mentioned in the introduction to this episode, everyone's definition of success is different. In fact, that's why I kept this week's question as vague as I did. I could have asked whether or not foreigners were capable of finding love, making a sizable income, or even growing their family here in Japan. But I kept it simple, asking, do you think foreigners are capable of achieving success in Japan? I was hoping that being as vague as I was would encourage Remy, Teresa, Andrew, and Eric to answer in a way that reflected their views of success. And that's exactly what happened. In just a moment, you'll hear from each of my guests as they share with you different definitions of success and whether or not, in their opinions, success can be achieved in Japan. But first, I'd like to share with you my opinions on the topic. I believe that achieving success, regardless how you define it, is like climbing a mountain. It doesn't matter where the mountain is or how far you have to climb. It's about how willing you are to get to the top and how you overcome the treacherous terrain that you're going to face. Whether you're living in your home country or here in Japan, achieving success, no matter what it is that you consider success to be, is going to require a lot of hard work. There are most certainly going to be struggles, and you're probably going to see some failure too. For me, achieving success is much less about where you are and much more about who you are. Are you the type of person who's willing to put in the time? Are you the type of person who overcomes those struggles? And are you the type of person who looks at failure as a learning experience? If you can do all of those things, no matter where you are, success is going to be something you can achieve. Of course, it does take time for this to happen, but it's still within your grasp. I know this not only because I've seen many successful foreigners in Japan during my years here, but I have myself achieved a certain amount of success. One thing that I consider a success is the fact that I am even here. When I first came to Japan, it was, of course, with my husband, who had a job here that had an expiration date. For that reason, we weren't sure how long we were going to be in Japan, and to be completely honest, we weren't sure if Japan was a place we wanted to stay. It wasn't until a few years later that we realized Japan was the place for us and began the process of learning what it would require for us to stay here. We did a lot of research, and we also talked to a lot of people. One thing that most people told us was that staying in Japan as an American man married to an American woman was impossible. It was something that people just didn't do, and we were looking for answers that just weren't out there. Hearing this would have crushed some, but for my husband and I, it was motivating. It motivated us to find the answers, and it motivated us to push harder, and that's just what we did. Now it's been just shy of a decade that we've been here in Japan. And to say that we're lucky is kind of a cop-out. I don't really think luck had anything to do with it. It was about the hard work, the effort, and the overcoming of many struggles that we faced along the way. Now I realize that what my husband and I have is not everyone's picture of success. We certainly aren't well-to-do, and we don't own a house or have fancy cars. But we have achieved one of our goals, and that, in my opinion, is a success. Or maybe even the first of many goals that needs to be reached in order to achieve a greater success. Of course, this is just my opinion, and I'm sure you're anxious to hear what everyone else has to say. So let's go ahead and begin with our first guest.
Well, that depends. It depends on what you call success. It depends on what kind of person you are, what kind of thing you do. But mostly, unless you have, let's say, a Japanese liaison or Japanese middleman, it's almost impossible for a foreigner, to achieve success in Japan. That it is in IT, that it's entertainment, that it's almost anything. There are some people who, mostly you can get a stable income, a stable job, a stable life, yes. But if you're trying to, let's say, get fame or be popular or be known or try to just go out there and be like the sole expert on one topic, let's say, or you try to run a successful business, chances are you would need a liaison, a Japanese liaison. But if you just want a stable life for yourself, you can pretty much do that on your own. But then again, most of the time, a stable life would imply maybe marriage. So in that case, I guess your wife or husband, your Japanese wife or husband, would be your Japanese liaison. So I guess no matter what you try to do in Japan and try to get some success on your own, you can't really do it as a foreigner. But if you manage to be amicable and befriend some good Japanese people, they can help you out. And that way you can achieve some success. Yes.
This question is rather difficult in the fact that it all depends on what you think success is. If you think success is the same as you would back in your own country, or whether it's been evolved because you're in a foreign country, that I'm not really sure. For me, I think just in general living is the same whether you're here or at home. You get up in the morning, you go to work, you go home. If you have a family, you have to take care of the family. I don't think that really changes regardless of the country that much. In my case, I've been working in a nursing home for about 5 or 6 years, and I started with basically no work experience, or in that field anyway. And now I'm manager of the second floor, so I guess if you want to call that success, I guess it is, because as a foreigner, I guess I'm one of the few that have been given that, and it means that the staff, my bosses around me have acknowledged the job that I've done. And I think the Japanese are very generous in that fact, that they will, given time, recognize what you've done and will take steps to show that, although it doesn't come easily at first.
Yeah, most certainly I do. I think sometimes you'll run into problems with foreigners that kind of take what I would call the easy path to success, which for me, that means acting like a stereotype and acting like what people expect foreigners to look like and act like. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, on television, you'll see people that act like, your typical foreigner stereotype. You fill in the blank of what you think a foreigner in Japan looks like, and unfortunately, they become popular. Now, I don't see them becoming popular for very long. I think it's a short-lived success. People kind of see the novelty of it and go, yeah, that guy's funny, and then they just kind of move on to the next thing. And unfortunately, if that's what your idea of success is, then yeah, you could probably achieve that pretty easily. But, there are foreigners here in Japan that are sports, in different sports capacities. And so you've got baseball players and you've got volleyball players and tennis players and things like that. And if that's what you want to achieve for success, then, I think that's something that you can definitely do. Now, I don't know a whole lot about politics in Japan. I don't follow a whole lot of politics and don't usually engage in conversations about politics, whether it be Japan related or whatnot. So I don't know if there are many foreigners in the political scene. I can imagine that there's probably not, but maybe in like lower level government, I would assume that it's probably maybe a little bit easier. But who knows? I could be totally off base with that. And like I said, I'm no expert on it. So yeah, so that being said, I could be wrong.
I like real answers to real questions. I don't like nebulous, subjective answers. As I'm sure you're going to hear is, of course, what one person considers success is subjective, but I'm going to use this from a little bit more common point of view, which is what most people would think of success. And the answer to this question is a very direct yes. Now, becoming successful in just about anything is going to be challenging. Of course, you're going to have a lot of difficulties in achieving success anywhere, but here you're going to have a few more. But you're also going to have an advantage over here that I will get into a little bit later. First, let me give you the bad news. The bad news is you can add to the difficulties of achieving success, of course, a language barrier, a culture barrier, which will be very significant, and a legal barrier probably too, because you're going to have rules and regulations and laws and compliance issues here in Japan that you probably wouldn't have in most of the other parts of the world, particularly the West, like the US and Canada. But if you learn them and you can get through them, it's absolutely possible of achieving success here in Japan. It's been done plenty of times, or at least relative enough success that you know whether or not you want to stay and continue to become successful here while getting by, well enough on your own. So the answer, yes. Foreigners can absolutely achieve success here in Japan. Just get ready for work, which is what it takes to become successful anyway.
So, do you think that achieving success is something you're capable of doing in Japan? Let us know your thoughts by visiting JQNA on Facebook at facebook.com/JQNA podcast. Also, be sure to check out the show notes for this episode at kittydoesjapan.com/JQNA. There, you'll find a list of foreigners who have achieved success here in Japan doing many things, some of which might even surprise you. Next week on JQNA, we're talking about whether it's easy or hard to live in Japan. I'm very excited to see what everyone has to say, and I hope you are too. Thank you once again for listening to JQNA. On behalf of the entire cast, we hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope to see you again next week.